so wild what this movie and soundtrack has meant for so many Asian faces and lives out there. And, my brother, as a great example, like a direct example, he was just so excited that there was a superhero that looked like him.
Hi, I'm Rianne Daly, and I'm joined by Nikki for the latest in NME's In Conversation video series. Hi, Nikki, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm great, thank you. I'm excited to be talking to you as Every Summertime is doing so well right now. Obviously, that song was part of the Shang-Chi soundtrack last year, but now it's having its own moment. What's it been like seeing it take off so much lately?
It has been really wild. I actually was really late to finding out that it was trending. The way I found out was through my 11-year-old little brother who's on TikTok. And he was like, "Hey, your song's blowing up." So that was definitely kind of like a very pleasant surprise. Yeah, it was one of those last minute songs that we created at the tail end of the process. And so, yeah, to see it take off is just really wild and awesome.
What does your brother think about seeing going on the app and seeing his sister's song everywhere?
I think he secretly loves it. I think
Yeah.
he's definitely milking it at school.
I don't blame him.
Yeah.
So you said that this song was the last song or one of the last songs that you wrote for the Shang-Chi project, and obviously you contributed several others to the soundtrack. How were you feeling when you started what turned out to be this song? Were you kind of tapped out of ideas? Were you kind of in the groove of the project by then?
Yeah, so at that point we had made to like about 5 to 7 ideas, and it was me. My main collaborator during this process was Jacob Ray, who's also my boyfriend, so that was convenient. But we had made 5 to 7 ideas, and then at the very end we kind of like were like, this was our like, you know, it was almost kind of like our throwaway last minute, let's just make another song thing. And we had been listening to a lot of Barry White, and that was kind of the inspo for it. And yeah, we just literally sat one night in his living room, and in 3 hours, the song was done. It was kind of one of those very just like magical music moments. Yeah, so it was really fun, and it's just interesting that it was kind of like the throwaway back burner song, and then now it's taking off. Yeah, so it's
I feel like Barry White doesn't get the props these days as
I
well.
know, truly. Yeah, exactly. So,
What was it about his kind of style that you were trying to evoke on the song?
I think it's like the way that he talks in his songs. Like nobody really talks in their songs anymore. I feel like that trend died in the 90s, where it'd be like music and it was like, "I never told you." You know what I mean? Just like really low voices. And so we were just listening to that and just like bewildered as to kind of how people made music back then comparatively to now. And yeah, so we just were listening to it for fun. Also, he makes great music, so
Some classics.
total car jams, right?
And narratively, I guess you were given kind of hints about what Shang-Chi was about, but not like the detailed scenes. And so you had to come up with your own idea for the story of this song. Can you tell me a bit about the story that you came up with?
Yeah, so exactly. The brief that I was given was very minimal. It was just he had the main character's parents who love each other, and that's kind of all I knew. And I knew that it was set in San Francisco. So basically, I just kind of took that and ran with it. And it's kind of like I compare it to when you are, uh, I've auditioned for like acting jobs, and you're given sides, which are just like increments of the script, and you don't know the context, right? So it's kind of like it's actually very creatively stimulating to create your own context and just kind of make your own storyline. So the storyline for this, sorry, that was a tangent. Storyline is essentially that I came up with is, there are two Asian American lovers in San Francisco in the 1970s, 80s. And I was just kind of thinking about, like them being straight out of college and kind of like, what does that mean for them? What does that look like? I imagined him kind of meeting her dad for the first time and what that kind of would have felt like for them. And so it's just this linear growing together kind of relationship narrative. And I just took that and ran with it.
You have a
Yeah.
new visual coming out soon, I think, where that kind of narrative continues, where you see a couple who are older.
Yes, exactly. So that's super exciting.
Also, as we mentioned before, you did contribute other songs to the Shonji soundtrack, Always Rising, Clocked Out, and Swan Song. Now you've had a few months distance between the film and the soundtrack coming out. What would you say your reflections on the experience of working on the soundtrack were, and kind of the amazing reaction to it as well?
It honestly, I am somebody that things don't really register until way later. So I've actually had a lot of time, obviously, since it has come out to kind of process. But at the time, I was just like so bewildered that I was working on a Marvel soundtrack. It almost just didn't really process for me. I was kind of in work mode, and I was like compartmentalizing, just I'm going to work on this the best I can. And then now it's just kind of like reaping the responses and the reactions. And it's just so wild what this movie and soundtrack has meant for so many Asian faces and lives out there. And, my brother, as a great example, like a direct example, he was just so excited that there was a superhero that looked like him. And yeah, to see the response to kind of this movie and the soundtrack has just been very like humbling. And also as an Asian person, like I also just feel very encouraged and emboldened in many ways. Yeah.
What was it like when you first went to see the movie and heard all of the songs playing as the scenes played out?
Yeah, it was so cool. Again, like they are very good at keeping the plot hush hush. Like even as you're creating the soundtrack, it's like I knew very little. And so watching it at the premiere was very just amazing. And what I learned watching movies at like premieres is it's so like supportive. It's the most like supportive time to watch a movie because all the people that worked on the movie are there and they're watching it also for the first time. So there's cheering and just like excitement, clapping, and it's just like the most supportive, happy place to be. And yeah, it's just really awesome to be a part of that. And just watching it for the first time I just could not believe my eyes that this was like an Asian story and it was a Marvel movie. And yeah, they just did an incredible job.
Do you have any ambitions to do more soundtracks? And if so, is there kind of like a dream kind of film that you'd want to soundtrack, or a favorite TV show you'd want to write a song for?
It's a very good question. Yeah, I don't know if I have like a certain TV show or movie that I would want to soundtrack, but I definitely would love to have that opportunity for sure in the future. I think it's been so much fun working on this specific one because as a writer, you kind of have to embody somebody else's story and perspective. And so that's been very creatively stimulating in a different way because I normally would write based on, my personal experience. And so kind of writing through the characters' perspectives was super fun. So yeah, I'd love to do that again. And it kind of takes me back to like second grade, language class or writing class, and you're just kind of like once upon a time there was a rabbit, you know what I mean? And then just taking that story and running with it. So I'd love to do that in the future for other characters.
Do you think that way of writing is going to feed into your own new music that you've got coming up?
I think so. I mean, on a very, on a smaller scale, I already kind of do that. I think whenever I watch a movie and I'm super inspired by that story, sometimes I'll take some bits and pieces and weave them into mine, to supplement the, lack of things, to supplement my uneventful life sometimes. So yeah, I feel like I already kind of do that. But yeah, absolutely. I think that it has taught me so much, like just being on that experience and that project, and will help me a lot moving forward for sure.
And last year, you also put out a beautiful song called Split, which is about you splitting your time between Jakarta and LA and kind of like having to adapt and assimilate between the two. I guess you probably haven't much lately been able to go back to Jakarta for obvious reasons. But do you get to go back there quite a lot? And kind of how do you have to readapt when you do return home?
Yeah, great question. Pre-pandemic, I tried to always go twice a year. And so since the pandemic, it's just been so tough. I haven't seen my family in a year and a half, I think. So it's been a while. Yeah, it's been, but thank God for FaceTime and WhatsApp and everything. So it's been manageable. But in terms of how I kind of like readapt when I get home, it's really weird because coming to America, I experienced culture shock, and then I live in America, and then I come back home to Indo, and then I experienced reverse culture shock. And yeah, it's just like very micro things. Like you step out of the airport, it's hot, like it's so hot. And it's been so long since I have adapted to that, or just been kind of acclimated to that kind of weather. And so I notice it, right? So there are all these things that I kind of took for granted or didn't notice because, you acclimate to your environment and then you step away and come back. And in a way, I sort of view Jakarta in this new way that to where like I sort of like have my love for it has grown. You know what I mean? My appreciation for it has deepened and changed because, as a kid growing up in one place forever, you're kind of just like, yeah, it's home, whatever. And then having that kind of taken away from you and then stepping out of your comfort zone, it tends to create an appreciation for where you were from. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. There's a line I think in Split about like raining in Jakarta where it's dry in LA, which just reminded me when you were talking.
For sure. Like, yeah, even just how my skin reacts. Like when I'm in Indonesia, it's very humid, and so things are great. And then over here, it's just very dry. And yeah, I also just miss the predictability of, well, I guess that's not true. It's not very predictable, but I guess the constant like hot weather because we're in the tropics and we only have 2 seasons. It's just dry and wet every year. Yeah, and then in LA, it's the most unpredictable beast. It's hot today and then it decides to rain tomorrow, but then it doesn't rain for another 2.5 years. It's really
Aside from the weather, what would you say is the thing that you miss most about Jakarta when you're in LA and vice versa?
I miss my family, obviously, that goes without saying. I miss the food, that goes without saying. We have this thing in Indonesia, it's called tukang urut, which is basically these older ladies that come to your house and they like, basically the idea is they knock the wind out of you by like giving you really intense deep tissue massage, and they do it on the floor, and sometimes they'll use like coins to like literal like money, and they'll like scrape your back. It's kind of like, now there's this new, like not new trend, but everybody's kind of going crazy about gua sha or whatever. Asians have been doing that forever. So, like in Indo, it's not really a jade stone, it's a coin, what I mean? But yeah, afterwards, your back looks like the craziest, just it's like all red, but you feel so much better. So I miss that. Yeah.
And what's the thing you miss most about LA when you're in Jakarta?
What I miss about LA is, I guess, the weather. That's the thing. I always say the weather, but I really am I guess I just really love weather. But truly, like when it's nice because whenever you step outside in LA, it really feels like you're in air conditioned place, and it's dry and your hair doesn't get all crazy, and it's just very, it's basically nice weather all year round. So I love how this interview is just 50% weather.
It's important. It can really affect your day.
Actually, one thing that I do miss a lot about LA is hiking. I can't hike in Indo. And what else? Yeah, in Indonesia, at least in Jakarta, everything is built very up, because tall, because we don't have the real estate, obviously. In LA, everything is built very low because of earthquakes. And so I think just the architecture in itself is very different. And that's another thing that kind of shook me when I went home. I was like, I never realized how tall these buildings were. Even my house is basically just like a column that goes upwards. You don't see that in LA very much.
So in terms of new music, what have you been working on lately? Is there anything you can share with us today?
Yeah, I have been working on just kind of more guitar based, because I actually had a YouTube channel before I was Nikki. And that started because when I was in like 4th grade, my mom got me a guitar, and that's kind of my first instrument where I learned how to write songs on. And for the longest time, it was just me and my guitar. And then Nikki started, which was awesome because I learned how to produce. But yeah, I've just kind of felt this like beckoning call towards like kind of coming back to my singer-songwriter route. So yeah, I've just been kind of exploring and experimenting with that a lot.
How has returning to guitar kind of changed what you've been writing?
Oh, great question. I think like it's something about just having like writing with just my guitar. I feel like my lyrical tendencies tend to be kind of like naturally deeper, if that makes sense, and more it just has more substance to it emotionally, I think. Something about just having music be stripped back or acoustic, there's sort of it creates more room for emotion in a way, lyrically and melodically. And so yeah, I think that's kind of what I've noticed. Because when you work with a beat and there's like a lot of things going on, you kind of, the music guides you and guides what the song must be. But when you're just with a guitar, you kind of can dictate. At least for me, it's easier to dictate what the song could be when there's all these other elements. Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Do you think we'll hear anything new from you soon, or are you just going to kind of let every summertime have its time right now?
It's very loose right now, especially with Coachella coming up. I'm kind of just focusing on that right now. But yeah, hopefully something at the end of the year. Yeah, man, just kind of chilling.
Well, you just mentioned Coachella, and that is so exciting that you're playing there this year. What does it mean to you to be playing at that festival, first of all?
This is really funny, but I have actually never been to Coachella ever. So my first time at Coachella is me playing Coachella. So again, just one of those things where it's just really wild. It's one of the biggest festivals known globally. Even my dad is freaking out about it. He's like, "You're playing Coachella? I'm gonna come out there." So yeah, just I'm very, very excited. I'm kind of scared in a way, just because it's like I've never really had to play kind of a festival of that scale. Kind of daunting, but excited at the same time.
I'm sure you'll kill it. Who else are you excited to see on the bill there?
Phoebe Bridgers.
Yes.
I love her so much. I kind of like don't want to meet her. Just I mean I do obviously, but I because of like the saying, don't meet your heroes. Yeah, I don't know. I just feel like if I were to meet her, I would disintegrate and like not know what to say. So yeah, I love her. So, definitely her.
Yeah. And 88 Rising have their double happiness takeover on the Saturday. You're playing on the Friday. Are you going to be involved in the 88 thing as well?
I don't know how hush hush I'm supposed to keep it, but yeah, definitely expect something from me for sure.
Okay.
Yeah, that's
Exciting.
all.
Yeah. And speaking of 88, you obviously headlined Head in the Clouds in November in LA. What was that performance like for you?
Oh my gosh, that was the biggest production I've had in my career. And so it was just awesome. And I think I have never been more prepared for a show than for that show. You know, we really drilled in the rehearsals. And in a way, it was the biggest production that I've had to pull off. But at the same time, it was the most fun and memorable just because I had a whole entourage of people on stage with me that were there for every single rehearsal. And so it kind of it was just as much their show as it was mine. And so it sort of felt like we were a circus troupe family and that we were doing a show together. And so in a way, having all those people on stage, it made me feel less, there was less, I mean, there was pressure on me, but in a way, like I feel like I was sharing this with my stage family. And yeah, it was just, yeah, it was truly probably one of the highlights of my career thus far.
Yeah. You said on Twitter beforehand that you were absolutely not fucking playing, and you were right, you weren't. You had dancers, you had the whole big pop star production. It looked amazing.
Yeah.
What was your vision for that performance? What were you kind of trying to create on stage there?
Just lots of pyro. I mean, honestly, it did kind of start there. I was like, what if I had pyro this year? I've never had pyro before. Yeah, the vision I think was just, honestly, I looked to a lot of Halsey shows, and some of the inspo was also like Taylor Swift's productions. Their shows are just always so great, and so I kind of just looked to other female artists and kind of what they do, you know. All I knew is I wanted to play an hour-long set. I wanted to really challenge myself. I've never really done anything past 45 minutes, I think, and so I just kind of wanted to go that extra inch and play an hour set and see what that was like. And it was great. It didn't even feel like an hour. It felt like 10 minutes, you know. At the end of it, I was like, oh my gosh, we're done. So yeah, that was just great.
What was going through your head when you were on stage in that moment?
I was just honestly, I think what a lot of people don't know is you can't really see the audience that well when you're on stage, especially an audience of that size. So in a way, I just kind of convinced myself that I was just in a room by myself. And you know, kind of the blinding lights makes it a little easier sometimes to imagine that. And I read somewhere that apparently, like, and this could be total BS, but like I read somewhere that the like nervousness and excitement all stem from the same part of your brain. And so sometimes if you can basically just mask your nerves by convincing yourself that it's really excitement. And so I tried my best. I think that was just all that was going through my head. It's just like, do your best, have fun. You know, you've worked so hard to get here. Just have a blast. And that's kind of what I did.
How was the rest of Head in the Clouds for you? Do you have any kind of highlights or standout sets that you're still thinking about now?
Yeah, you know, somebody that really blew me away was Warren Hugh. He's one of the newer people that have been artists that have been signed. And yeah, I had never seen him really perform before. I already knew that he definitely has that like performing chromosome in him, you know what I mean? Because based on his videos and stuff, I just knew, yeah, this kid's a performer. But like watching him actually do his thing, like for the first time on that scale, was just so sick. And I was really rooting for him from the get-go, but just like seeing that manifest on stage was really, really cool. And I think like he's just a really good performer and has like a great, what's the word, career ahead of him.
So I guess Coachella is going to be on a smaller scale than Head in the Clouds for your set. What can we expect from your set at Coachella?
Yeah, I think I'm kind of still working out the kinks, but yeah, I think it's definitely gonna be a little less bombastic than Head in the Clouds, obviously, because it's a shared stage. But yeah, I think just expect some energy and good music. Yeah.
Looking forward to the rest of the year. What else have you got coming up? And maybe could we expect to see you in the UK anytime soon?
Oh my God, you don't understand. I love to go to the UK. Yes, I absolutely, that's definitely on my bucket list. I've actually never been to London. Can you believe that?
Wow, no.
I've been
You
to
need to come.
I know, I've been to a lot of other places in the world and I've never been to London, which is like quintessential. I don't know why that has never happened. But yeah, super excited. I don't know if you know Maisie Peters, but
Yeah.
she is one of my good friends and she needs to take me around London because that would just be a dream come true to like play London, like play a show in London and then just kind of get to see it. That would be the dream because sometimes you can't really do that on tour. You know what I mean? You fly in, you play the show, you get out. But hopefully, I'll just make a request and be like, "Can we stay in London for this many days?" We'll see.
Take a little holiday while you're here.
Yeah, exactly.
Great. Well, I can't wait until you do come over, and hopefully I will see you at Coachella as well.
Are you?
Yes, I'm going to be at
Oh
Coachella.
my gosh, exciting!
Yes. Great. Well, thank you so much for talking to me today, Nikki, and congratulations again on all the success of Every Summertime.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.